common sense with the Senior Delinquents.
Deep in the Carpathian mountain range, hidden from most of the world, a small, little-known kingdom exists, schizophrenia. From this hidden hamlet, the world's foremost prognosticator emerged, Nostradamus.
In the future, I see this. Artificial intelligence inseminates a hot chick. Part human, part machine, part ATM. Large hats will be worn by men after a pandemic virus from China mutates sexual organs to be on their heads. Microsoft and Apple will merge to become my clapper. There will be only one key, the AI key. The Washington Commanders football team, to be more inclusive of blacks, Indians, Asians, and white people, will be renamed the Foreskins, keeping the old nickname for the team. In the next decade, Hillary Clinton finally becomes president, not of the U.S., but the Vatican, once again breaking their glass ceiling.
Many visionaries are seen as crazy, but some who truly see things in a different way can change the world, such as Leonardo da Vinci. That's the theme of today's show. What is genius? Welcome to another extraordinary edition of Senior Delinquents. I'm Dennis Silvers here in Las Vegas, along with Jamie McWilliams in Tampa, Florida. Jamie, there's no definition of genius, but researchers have found out that it has to do with originality, creativity, and the ability to imagine or think in new ways and areas.
But Dennis, how do you qualify it? How do you measure it? Often, Einstein would forget he had his glasses on his head, or even forgot his telephone number. His response, I never commit to memory anything that can easily be looked up in a book. Well, many people are incredibly gifted, but only in one area. Let's bring someone in who has known people who many consider to be geniuses. Marty Higgins has worn many hats, fitting for his many talents. An innovator in video production, including both feature films and television, talk radio, a stand-up comedian, and a pioneer in the evolution of computers with Microsoft. So let's get Marty Higgins' thoughts on what it means to be genius. So glad to have you with us. Let's start off with, what is your definition of a genius?
Well, it's a little hard to define, but the people that I've known who were geniuses, who I think are geniuses, take in a lot of information, sleep on it a bit, and then when they come up with an idea, they delegate it out to people they know can handle the job.
Well, you became an intimate of sorts with Robin Williams on his Inner Circle. Start us off with what it was like to be there and what you gathered in terms of impressions. Did you recognize him as gifted or genius at work? And maybe you have an example of that one way or the other.
It was genius insofar as he had taken a bunch of different styles of comedy and absorbed them all so he could perform. He could make up a song on the spot. He had a quick one-liner for a joke. He was great with repartee. And he could do it at the drop of a hat. That brought an energy that the audience got swept up in.
Right now, my ego's saying, stay, but the rest of me saying, get off, you asshole.
I know that he was a genius. He was a comedic genius, as people call him. But Robin was really smart about it because he ordered his material, he kept it fresh, and he didn't steal anything from anyone. It was all his.
I did cocaine. But can you blame me? It's a slow goddamn game. Come on, Jack. I'm standing out in left field for 7 innings. There's a white line going all the way down to home plate.
wasn't there also kind of a heavy price to pay for his superstardom, his fame, and bottom line, that being drugs?
Yes. Most evident was the fact that wherever he was always on stage. Although he loved performing, every encounter with anyone was a moment where he had to shine. And to him, being the best was all that mattered. And when the drugs got involved, he'd push himself even further. He'd do 3 or 4 hours of comedy, then go to another comedy club and start all over again the same night. Massively driven.
You better open the door. I'm going to take a dump on the rug.
My brain will come up with all these ideas, but when you try to then verbalize it and put it in, it's like you can't keep up with what's going on in your brain. But it kind of seems like Robin had a gift for that, or was able to do something that other people just couldn't quite do, because it seems so spontaneous.
It's continual rehearsal. It's always
Really?
rehearsal. He'd be somewhere and he'd come up with an idea and he'd spit something out, and then a moment later he'd do it a little differently, then he'd do it a little differently. And it was kind of like polishing a stone. You know, you get the rough edges off it and it gets better and better. Then he'd do it in front of an audience and see what the reaction was, and then do it slightly different in front of another audience and figure out which one worked better.
Off stage, did you get deeply enough in your relationship with him to see the other aspects of Robin?
Well, if you got to be with him all the time, occasionally you'd see him during off moments. And during those off moments, he was not really shy, but he wasn't that outgoing. There were times, especially with booze and drugs, Corvo Gold and cocaine was the combo. He'd just be out of it for a while. And then the moment he needed to be back on, he'd be on like nothing happened.
When I looked at your bio and I saw how deeply you were involved with Microsoft, tell me a little about how that relationship evolved. And Bill Gates, richest man in the world, does that make him a genius?
Well, I got into it because I realized you could do comedy in front of 300 people in an audience and make $2,000 a night, or you could do it in front of 30 people in a boardroom and make $300,000. You know, the truth of it was the same charming interaction you had with people could also be used in a business sense. So I went to Microsoft. My wife was director of marketing for Windows 2000. They pulled me in to design interfaces, and I got to work with Bill on a bunch of things. An interesting cat, because he's kind of quirky and squirrely, still is. I mean, I don't think I've seen him change at all in the recent interviews. Bill was someone who understood how to put together an organization that had power and response that he could control the direction of. Bill also had a hell of an ego, or still has an ego. In one meeting, I gave him my idea about how we were going to change one of the parameters for the interface, and he goes, "Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And I went, "Wow, man, I just got knocked down by Bill Gates." And then I left, and my manager said, "You know, you're quite lucky, because when he says that to people, it means that he liked the idea, but he said he didn't like it so that he can use it somewhere else." I said, "Oh, well, that's genius in that strategic."
When you say somebody's the richest person in the world, you say, "Oh, that's genius." But it may not be genius. It may be a gift.
I think that building the organization is where the real genius was for him. Because at the time that Windows first came out, the idea of using the DOS operating system, that was purchased from IBM. And IBM says, well, people have to type it and it's hard to do, and nobody even wants to do it. And I think he bought it from the guy who designed it for like $11,000 or something.
Wow.
And
no.
parlayed that into, what, it was like 60, 80 billion right now, something like that.
Yeah.
But that's the organization. I mean, when I was on campus, there were 125 buildings at that point. Right next to me, the next building, were just guys who did Apple stuff. All of the Microsoft stuff for Apple. So he had the concept that we're not in competition with them, we're a supplier to them.
How about that?
Which was a kind of a wild thing to do at that time, because everybody was, proprietary and trying to hang on to their little piece of it. And he just wanted to get out and sell. when I want to use a video tool, I'd rather use Apple. There's genius all around.
People will hear other people come up with ideas that happens to hit that other person just the right way, and they go, that's genius. Why didn't I think of that? Because they kind of came up with a similar idea that they had, the way they hit you with their personality, their creativeness. I think it's very subjective. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I do. And, part of it is charisma. Because there are people who have such intense charisma that people just want to be part of it. David Bowie said, more than sex appeal, more than money, people are looking for someone who's going somewhere.
Waiting in the sky, he'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he blew our minds.
And they can hitch their wagon to that star. Musk is definitely in that league.
Doing a little research, they say some of these people have traits that may go back to autism. In the case of John Nash in Beautiful Mind, who was schizophrenic, yet he operated at a level that allowed him to see things that other people couldn't begin to imagine. Do you find that sometimes genius is almost going to go along with things like that, or Asperger's? Did you find that at all in terms of some of the people you have encountered?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that in a lot of people, especially successful people. I know that Gates and Jobs were actually extremely shy. Once a year they get on stage and talk to everybody, but other than that, they didn't like the public. They kind of kept to themselves. And I think that's part of the ADHD or Asperger's or, some of the, even bipolar. Some are extremely bipolar. And what that does is it has you create a world in contrast to the world outside. You have your own set of morals, strategies, your own way of viewing things, of analyzing. There are young people who are really brilliant and very gifted and fail to communicate coherently. And then again, I've known people who had grand ideas and did have that other element of being able to put it together, hire the right people, form the right organization. Musk is like that in a lot of ways. I mean, he's in like 6 different businesses at the same time. And then you look at someone like Nikola Tesla, who was absolutely brilliant. It's because of him we have electricity the way we do. Edison stole the concept from him. They have his drawings and his plans for that. They still don't know what the hell they are. And he went mad at the end of his life. And I mean, lived a solitary life, feeding and talking to pigeons.
How about Da Vinci? He seemed to have genius not in just one area, but almost anything he approached.
The interesting thing about Da Vinci was somebody asked him where his inspiration came from. And he said he takes a big piece of slate and he'll just throw some water at it. In that splash, he would begin to see things in the shapes. People go, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
It came from some water on a rock.
Well, Marty, I think that you're probably going to go outside with a slate and some water to come up with some brilliant ideas, having related that. But it's been great having you on the Senior Delinquents.
Thank you both, Jamie, Dennis. You're great guys. I love your show.
Marty, you're great. You can visit our website where all episodes and more of the Senior Delinquents can be seen, as well as on various other platforms. Jamie, what happened to you?
I volunteered for a science experiment that promised to make me a genius. They didn't mention any side effects. Had to get a bigger hat. Oh well, until next time, hi-ho, Silvers, away.